How enjoyable has it been for you this spring with all the new faces that you've had to start coaching, get used to?
It's been really enjoyable. You know, like you said, we had a lot of new guys in the room, and you know, a lot of young guys that don't have much experience, but they're eager to learn. You know, they're starting from square one, so they're listening to everything you tell them. They're holding on to it, so it's been good so far.
Who has stood out?
Well, from the safety position, I think Jamark Woods has had an outstanding spring. He's kind of earning his nickname, call him Woods, and he definitely brings the wood. He's a physical player. He's a hitter. I mean, he's what you look for back there. He's got good range, and a lot of things he needs to work on still, but he's shown a lot of potential and enthusiasm for the game. And you know, Jalen Kelly-Powell, he's done a nice job. You know, he comes in from a good high school program. He's been well coached. You know, he's really technically sound for a young defensive back. His man-to-man skills are definitely there. They flash, and you know, he's done a nice job so far.
For Kalik and Josh, for them to be kind of moving back and forth between safety and that Viper position, does that help them, or does it hurt them not being able to focus on one spot?
Well, I think it helps them, you know, after last year having a whole, you know, season under their belts playing just the rover position, you know, for Kalik. Now having to play another position, I think it gives them a better understanding of the whole defense. You know, once you play different positions, you know, it kind of makes things start to make sense and they come together. You see the big picture, and I think it'll help them definitely in the long run. I think Viper's a good position for him, you know, with his physical traits, Kalik, and I think he's done a nice job so far.
Is Kennel kind of trying to do some things from a leadership standpoint?
Say Kennel?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Tyree, he's the oldest guy back there in our room, in the safety room. And, you know, he's a guy that coaching may be in his future. And he's kind of taken to that role. He's, you know, taking young guys aside and showing them the ropes, trying to show them all the little details of the position. And he's definitely helped me back there, you know, kind of giving a player's perspective to those young guys that have come in.
What's the challenge of working with a group of young players and getting them up to speed for game preparation?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge really is getting them to, you know, open up and communicate back there playing the safety position. You got to be able to line guys up and make checks. And if they're not confident in what they're doing, you know, they're not going to be as loud. You know, in our stadium, you got 110,000 fans, and, you know, you got to be loud and be able to communicate. And that's one thing that's been somewhat of a difficult adjustment, just getting them to open up and communicate and get the system down. But I think once they do that, you know, they've shown a lot of potential, you know, skill-wise with their ability. I think the ceiling is high for all of those young guys.
With the way Don Brown likes to play defense, does that make it easier in some ways on safeties, or give you more to deal with in terms of they're putting so much pressure on those guys have to be, you know, in place? And
yeah, there's some pressure. I mean, our rover position, he's got to get everybody on the defense lined up, you know, and a freshman, especially those guys, they're coming, they're mid-year, you know, they should be in high school, going to their high school prom right now, and they're here, you know, trying to get guys lined up that they were watching on TV last year. So I think that's a bit of an adjustment for them. But I think the good thing about playing in Coach Brown's system is, you know, we're going to bring pressure, so we don't have to cover for very long. You know, we got guys up front that are going to bring it and get after the quarterback, and that makes our job easier.
Do you simplify things at all? I mean, I know safety's kind of a cerebral position. Are you keeping things simple for now with them, or are you giving them the whole deal?
We throw a lot at them, you know, the first couple days, and kind of you throw a lot at them and see what sticks, and kind of go from there. And you know, like I said, they've done a nice job so far, you know, learning and taking it all in. I think now we're at the point where it's kind of you're learning the finer points of the system and all the details, you know, to take you to the next level.
What type of progress has Keith Washington made?
Keith, he's having a decent spring. I mean, you know, he's come a long way, you know, from when I first got here. You know, he's made some plays this spring. He's a competitive kid. You know, he doesn't like to get beat. You know, he's kind of hard on himself sometimes, but he's made nice progression this spring.
Has he worked some at safety, or has he been staying at corner?
He's been that corner. He's been that corner.
Who from among the wide receivers has given your group a particularly hard time?
A lot of the wideouts have been injured. We've, been struggling to keep guys healthy. I think Tariq Black's had a nice spring so far. He's flashed some ability. Nate Johnson's another guy who showed up. He's a wiggly receiver in there in the slot. Our safeties, have a tough time covering him at times. So he's had a nice spring, I think.
Can you describe that growth dynamic? Because, I mean, yeah, there's young corners, but then there's also some young, pretty talented receivers, kind of the push along, pull along kind of thing. Can you describe that?
Yeah, I mean, they're all in there competing against each other. They're making each other better. And we got some talent over there at the receiver position, and it only makes us better. I mean, I'd rather be going against a talented young group, than an experienced group that doesn't have much talent, and they're definitely raising our level and our performance level.
In terms of like what you want to see, like lessons learned, maybe they get beat, but it's something that they learn from that. Are you seeing a lot of that in terms of, like young defensive backs making young mistakes, but kind of bouncing back a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of mistakes made, and we anticipate them making mistakes as young guys, but I think you said it, exactly, the way we try to tell it to them. Mistakes are going to happen. It's all about bouncing back, going on to the next play and not letting your mistake, shut you down for the rest of the game. You always got to go on to the next play and put the past behind you. Learn from your mistakes, but then again, don't let it weigh you down in your mind. You got to move on to the next play.
Brian, who are you relying on the most in terms of, who's with the ones back there? Is it Tyree and Josh, or is it some other guys, or is it still in flux?
Well, I mean, we're still competing. We'll see in the spring game, how those guys line up in live competition. But right now, Tyree Kennel, Josh Metellus, those guys are the leader of the pack, in my eyes, and they've done a good job, just from a leadership standpoint. I think Tyree's done a good job communication, getting guys lined up and making checks. And I feel comfortable with him in the game right now.
That's a big step for him now because, DeMonte and Delano were seniors and knew the communication stuff. I mean, how much bigger of a step is that for Tyree to have to do, all the traffic direction back there, so to speak?
It is a big step, He hasn't really played a full game, since I've been here. Now, if he ends up winning that starting job, it's going to be on him to carry the load, and he hasn't done it before. But, he's a guy, he was a 4-year starter in high school. So he loves the competition. And when he did get called on last year, when he had an opportunity to play, he stepped up and did a nice job, whether it was on teams or when he came in, in a relief role for DeMonte or Delano. He did a nice job. So definitely happy.
The task of getting everybody lined up, is that even harder this spring, given the fact that the safeties aren't new, it's all, 10 new starters on the defense and a lot of other young guys playing?
Yeah, I think really those guys in the second group, they're in there with all the young guys. Sometimes they have the harder job because they got to get guys lined up that have no idea what they're doing. So sometimes working with younger guys next to you makes it even harder. And but it makes you a better player. Those older guys, they got it clicking. They know what they're supposed to do. But working with older guys is definitely easier, to answer your question.
Because of that, because you had 2 defined starters, you kind of rode those guys a lot of snaps last year. Do you expect there to be more rotation this year?
I think that could be an option. Rotating guys. We got guys that are talented and able to play. So we may end up rotating. Depending on how we continue to compete. In the rest of the spring and the summer. But the best guys are going to play. So, we like to keep it an open competition, and we'll see what happens.
Are they defined spots, the 2 guys, or are they, safety strong? Or
yeah, we have a strong safety and a free safety. We call him a rover. Is a strong safety and the free. But, we always tell them the more you can do, if a guy is versatile, if he can do both, he adds value, to he'll have a better chance of getting out on the field if he can do both. So the more they can learn, the better off.
Are either of them, are those guys, those two, Metellus and Tyree, in specific spots, or are they switching back and forth, or what?
You know, right now they're in specific spots. You know, Josh has been playing more rover. Tyree's been playing the free. But last year, both of them played, you know, both positions. So they're smart enough guys where they can go in and play both. So that definitely helps us out. And actually, Josh, he can go in and play Viper as well. So.
When you're recruiting, what skills do you look for in a free or strong safety versus a Viper?
Well, I think the free and the strong, we look for a little better, you know, cover skills. They got to cover a slot receiver rather than a tight end. Our Viper is more of a blitzer, you know, a stronger guy. You know, he's got to cover tight ends, whereas the safety's got to, you know, play a little better away from the ball, backpedaling, you know, speed. You got to be a little quicker because you got to match up against receivers as a safety, whereas a Viper, you're more so in line, playing closer to the ball.
Brian, outlook, I guess, spring outlook for Ambry and Ben, what have you seen out of those two?
They've shown a lot of ability. You know, right from the start, they both competed, and they proved that they want to play. They get out there. They're out there every day. You know, haven't missed snaps due to injury, and they're both shown good man-to-man skills. You know, just from an athletic standpoint. You know, now it's just about cleaning up their technique and, you know, learning where they're supposed to be.
With Ben's height, have you tried to, you know, politic to try and get him over at the safety spot as a spot he could play?
He's definitely got a skill set to play safety, just as far as his cover skills. Right now, I think he's better off at the corner position. You know, let him go up and line up and play man-to-man, and I think he's comfortable there right now.
How do they compare to Vert and David? Because those guys have been in the program for a year already.
Mm-hmm. How do they compare?
How do those freshmen compare to them? Because Don, he said that those guys are pretty much penciled in as the starters right now at corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a little different situation because they're coming in mid-year. You know, they're here for the spring ball, whereas, you know, Levert and David, they came in the fall right before the season. So they just kind of got thrown in the mix, and they were taking classes and, you know, missed a lot of meeting time early on. But, I mean, from a talent standpoint, you know, they're pretty even. They're all really good players with a lot of potential. The ceiling is high for all four of those guys.
Have you seen Vert and David separate themselves at all from the guys who just enrolled?
I think they started, you know, ahead of them just from a natural standpoint. They've been here, you know, a year. So in my mind, you know, I trust them to go into the game, you know, more so than the other guys because they know the system and their technique-wise, they've been, you know, studying here for a year. So right now, I would say they're ahead of them, but, you know, those young guys are pushing them every day.